And we're back, this time with Donald Trump's tax plan. As I mentioned before, no middle-income taxpayer will see an increase in their taxes with either candidate's plan. Now, Mr. Trump takes this one step further by reducing the tax burden in some regard for all taxpayers. Okay, putting my glasses back on so we can take a look at his proposals from his website. First, Mr. Trump proposes to reduce the number of tax brackets from 7 to 3. Which would simplify a tax code that definitely needs simplifying. The new tax brackets would be 12%, 25%, and 33%. And he's also proposed a 15% rate for pass-through business income, which is business income claimed on individual tax returns. And that pass-through rate would create a much lower rate for a substantial number of very high-income households. Now, the Trump campaign hasn't offered the exact amount of tax savings for middle-income earners. However, using the Tax Foundation's evaluation of the White House Republican plan for taxes, which is has the same tax brackets as Donald's plan, the change would lift after-tax incomes for the bottom 80% of income earners, and that definitely includes me, maybe you, by 0.2 to 0.5%. So if you earn, say, $50,000 a year, you're looking at around $265 extra in your pocket for that year. On the other end of the spectrum, again, using the Tax Foundation's estimate, the new lower tax rate would lift the after-tax income for the wealthiest 1% of Americans by 5.3%. So if you earn, say, $1 million a year, you'd be looking at about $53,000 extra in your pocket. Now, Mr. Trump's plan also includes a provision to eliminate that carried interest loophole. However, because his plan lowers business taxes to just 15%, turns out that hedge fund and private equity managers would likely end up paying lower tax rates than they do now, even without that loophole. Another component of Mr. Trump's plan, which he just unveiled this week, is to help with the cost of childcare. His plan would exclude childcare costs from income tax from birth to age 13. The exclusion, which he notes is also known as an above-the-line tax deduction, will cover up to 4 children per family. And Donald's plan would also include an above-the-line deduction for elder care costs. And that deduction would be limited to $5,000 per year. Now remember, these are tax deductions, not credits. So if you don't pay federal income taxes or you don't itemize deductions, this will not help you at all. Now, Trump's plan addresses just those families this way, and it gets confusing, so try and stay with me. His website states that for lower income taxpayers who can't use the exclusion against the income tax because they have no income tax liability, the Trump plan would also provide them a boost in the Earned Income Tax Credit, also known as the EITC. This boost would be half of the payroll taxes paid by the lower earning parent and would be subject to an income limitation of $31,200. So for a parent earning that amount, which translates to $15 an hour at a full-time job, the EITC boost in the Trump plan could mean as much as $1,200 extra a year to help pay for your child care costs. Now, by comparison, if you're a family that does pay income tax and that does itemize your deductions, let's say you have a combined family income of $200,000 a year. And your child care cost is the average of $12,000 a year. Your boost would end up being $3,000 extra per year that you could spend on child care costs. And of course, if your income is more than that, because of the tax deduction, you would end up receiving even more of a benefit. So we can see that this plan offers much more to high-income taxpayers than it does to low-income taxpayers. Okay, and finally, Mr. Trump is calling for a repeal of the estate tax, or as he calls it, the death tax. The current estate tax only affects 0.2% of taxpayers. 99.8% it does not affect. So repealing this tax would only affect the very, very, very wealthy. Okay, so Mr. Trump has said that his tax cuts would stimulate growth in the economy, which would create revenue needed to fund some of his programs like increases in military and infrastructure spending and lots of others that he's talked about. However, if we look back in recent history, this hasn't been the case. The George W. Bush tax cuts didn't stimulate the economy. And if you take the state of Kansas, albeit on a much, much smaller level, slashing taxes there has been terrible for that state. So I looked to see what economists and think tanks were thinking. And they pretty much agreed that Mr. Trump's plan will increase the debt over the next decade. As an example, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says Mr. Trump's tax plan would likely cost $2.55 trillion over that period. Okay, I hope this helped you in your understanding of Donald Trump's tax plan. And if you haven't done so yet, I hope you'll take a look at my video on Hillary Clinton's tax plan. And once you've looked at those, just to let you know, when we meet again, I'll be talking about the labor movement and unions, which is so important. You definitely won't want to miss that. Okay, see you next time.